So here's what I think they really want to introduce digital ID for. And it's going to come as no surprise, but what might be a surprise is how far along this is already developed, which I'll explain in this video. Because there's already a bill winging its way through the Houses of Parliament at the moment. It's in the House of Lords at the moment, which could allow them to literally spy on your bank accounts and even take money out of your bank if they believe you owe money. I'll come back to explain that in a moment. But they are already rolling out digital ID, and they are starting with veterans. So all over the news today is that they're rolling this out for veterans for whom there is already an ID available. It is the Veteran ID card, which has been available for some time. But they are now saying that they're rolling out a digital ID for veterans to serve as a case study to ease concerns over the government's plans to bring in mandatory digital ID for anyone wanting to work. That tells me two things. First of all, it tells me that they acknowledge that there are concerns over the government plans to introduce digital ID, which is good to hear, that they are not absolutely tone deaf, that people don't necessarily want this, and that there are concerns about it. But they say, nonetheless, about 300,000 ex-military personnel with physical veteran cards can now download a digital version to a smartphone in a move to make it easier to prove their status. And they go on to explain what the benefits are and all of this sort of thing. And they say that using a closed group like the 300,000 veterans is a really good case study to show that it does work, and it will be very beneficial. It shows the technology works and shows that we can prove and dispense with some of those legitimate concerns around privacy and security of those kind of issues. However, on top of all of the videos that I've done recently about the security aspects, this says that it will ease the security concerns. Well, I beg to differ, because if we go over to the page where they've launched this on the gov.uk website, and we scroll all the way to the bottom, they talk about full end-to-end programmatic verification will be rolled out over the next year. So it hasn't been rolled out yet. That is presumably why it can only be used in person and not online, because it appears, if they are talking about end-to-end encryption, that it is not yet fully secure. At least that's how it reads to me. Nonetheless, they say from today, the 17th of October, it will give veterans a seamless way to confirm their status in person and will include information already featured on their physical card, displaying their name, photo, latest service, and date of birth with the security features that protect their personal information, which I'd suggest they already have if they have a physical card, which they can already get. Now, if they don't already have a physical card, which doesn't take much to get, they probably don't want one. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe there'll be some bigger uptake of a digital one that they do on their phone rather than a physical card, but maybe there won't. But all the same, it is already available for these such things. And at the moment, as this says, it's only available in person, so there isn't really much of a benefit other than you get it quicker. The downside is you are then rolled into this digital ID and there's no going back. It then goes on to say, which will feed into some of the concerns, that's the second highlighted bit down below, just like a digital bank or rail card, it puts convenient proof of service directly in veterans' pockets, highlighting which service of the armed forces that they last served in, etc. They then say that they can use the digital card to register their service background with their GPs, they confirm the military background to access support for housing and various other things. Now, whilst these might be benefits, and I'm not going to say that there won't be potential benefits of using digital ID, there are still risks. But veterans were not the first group, technically, that they were targeting for this, which is actually anyone with a driving license, because as of January this year, they put this out and said, digital driving license to come this year. The UK government is launching a gov.uk wallet, an app to simplify access to services and documents like digital driver's licenses, alongside reforms to public sector technology, etc. Now, I don't know about you, but the very thought about a gov UK wallet with all my stuff in it somewhat terrifies me. Not least of which because it's the government running it and it sounds very much like a surveillance state, but also because of the security risks, which I talked about in my previous videos. Because if it does get hacked, then everything is there. It seems bad enough to me that there is an Apple Wallet with my bank cards linked to it, and it's that easy to make payments with it. There's been a lot of fraud about that as well, and the banks have had to contend with that as well. Imagine the devastation if it's actually the Gov wallet that is hacked somehow. But nonetheless, I talked about that in a lot in my previous videos, but just to briefly recap this, they say a mobile driver's license will be one of the first digital documents in the Gov UK wallet, launched later this year, allowing people to prove their age from their phone in shops or online. As I said, I talked about the security concerns a lot in my previous videos, so I'll not dwell on that too much here, save that I will read out one more email out of the many that I've received from someone with a lot of experience before I go on to talk about how they might well be able to reach into your bank account and just take your money, and how I think all of this is linked, and it's not just a fancy coincidence. So my viewer writes that they have 25 years experience in cryptography and security solutions for many global blue chip companies and UK government, just for the context. They say that, firstly, they've been following my videos here with great interest, so thank you. But obviously, the conversation has been around the centralized storage of data within the government's proposed solution, or even if it's a federated service model, it's still going to have a lot of data in one place, which is a security risk. Now, my viewer said that they want to bring to our attention that there's another angle which is worth thinking about here, and that it's actually possible for people to provide digital information and to receive services back without providing their entire digital identity to the receiving party, which is what the government is trying to sell you the idea on. My viewer says this could solve many of the actual problems that the government is lying about regarding its benefits of the solution it's proposing. We could indeed have easy access to digital services in a way that we control the identification and sharing of data. The solution is available now, and the technology can be implemented now at a much lower cost, because many of the aspects that are required for the government solution are simply not required for this solution that we're talking about here. The solution is known as zero-knowledge proofs. It is a cryptographical-based approach that means you can share specific data, and only specific data, that is required to access that particular service or instance. So, for example, now this feeds into the Uber Eats example that I told you about, where they were turning up and they want to scan your ID into their app, and there is a risk that they could just take a photograph of it, and that is putting your entire ID at risk. Your photo, your name, your date of birth, your address, everything, all in one go. My viewer writes, however, if it's age verification that they're after, then you could share in a way that is provable your age to a third party without having to reveal any of the other details. The same is possible for updating travel documents such as passports, where you can share the existing passport details, potentially a birth certificate, without having to reveal the rest of your identifying details. This solution requires no centralized storage of your documentation or data, hence reducing the risk of a centralized storage system. The cryptography provides the proof that the details you are providing are correct. And here's the kicker, my viewer says. What the solution doesn't provide is the ability for the receiving party of the digital ID, or any bit of it, either to control that ID or to harvest or control the subsequent data relating to it. And therefore, my viewer says it's easy to call the government's bluff here. Indeed, if they want simplistic access benefiting the ease of use for citizens in a cost-effective fashion, then it can be provided in this way and reduce risk and improve the security, which you would expect them to be wanting to do. So in other words, they're going about it the wrong way. There's another way of doing it. We could implement a system right now with existing technology to prove any one bit of the information that we want to prove. Be it age, you could have a cryptography solution whereby you show them something and it says, I am this old. It's proven because it's on a system. And so it's cryptographically proven, but you don't need all the other details, and you can't have access to all the other details, which is, as it seems, what the government wants here. And so with that addressed, allow me to reintroduce you to, I say reintroduce because I've talked about this before, the Public Authorities Fraud, Error and Recovery Bill. Now, we can probably all agree that we would like the government to be able to recover fraudulent monies and things like that. And this, as I mentioned, is currently all the way through to the report stage in the House of Lords. So there probably are some concerns being raised in the House of Lords, and I certainly hope that this has been debated. But in some form or another, I expect this to go through to royal assent. By this stage, it's been through the first and the second reading and the committee stage. Now it's at the report stage. And whilst we could get some parliamentary ping pong here, I do suspect that this is going to go through in broadly the format that it's in now. So what does it do? Well, in a nutshell, and I'll show you how, but in a nutshell, it will require banks, which are referred to as a person, because person in legislation can either refer to an actual person or a corporation or whatever, and it will require banks to provide information which effectively allows snooping by the government into bank accounts, and then in certain situations, an order to recover money directly from that account. In a nutshell, that is what it would allow it to do. And so broadly, we've got the key concepts, the investigatory powers, the rights to recover, and the methods of recovery, which include, as you can see here, direct deduction orders from a bank. So let's take a look at this. So under the core functions of the minister, it says it is the core function of a minister for a cabinet office to investigate suspected fraud against public authorities, recover amounts mentioned, take enforcement action, etc., all of which you would expect them to do. Now, I don't have a problem with any of that. What I do have a problem with is when there are mistakes made and people are caught up on it, because invariably they will, because mistakes can and do happen. So you will end up with some people, in my view, in this situation where they've had money taken off them that is just wrong. Now, even with the system that it is today, we've had situations where people have sent money to HMRC and it's been wrongly allocated. They've been fined and they've ended up fighting the fine, this sort of stuff, when it's not their fault. It's HMRC's fault. Now, mistakes happen, but it's a problem that they have to deal with. Now, under information notices, this provides that the minister may require a person, a bank, to give specified information where the minister considers that it is necessary and proportionate to do so for the purpose of exercising the functions, i.e. to investigate fraud and so on. The information relates to a person whom the minister has reasonable grounds to suspect has committed fraud against a public authority. Then we have recovery notices before bringing proceedings in court or tribunal for a claimed amount on behalf of another public authority. The minister must give the person from whom the minister reasonably believes the amount is recoverable a recovery notice. And then looking at the methods of recovery, there are direct recovery from bank accounts and other deductions by way of deductions from earnings. That's a bit like an attachment of earnings order. Then it goes on to civil penalties and all sorts of other things. Now, a direct deduction order is where a payable amount is recoverable from a liable person who holds a bank account. The minister may make an order for a direct deduction in respect of that account. And this might be a regular direct deduction order or a lump sum direct deduction order. So they might take money over a period of time, or they might take it all in one go, depending on how much is in the account. So as I said, I've done a video on this previously. I'll try and find it and link it. But in my view, one of the very obvious reasons for digital ID is because all of this is linked. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that the government is going after various methods of fraud investigation and recovery and so on. Those are correct. Those should be done. But I do feel that this is going to be to the detriment of the vast majority of the public who don't want digital ID, might get caught up on it, is at risk of being hacked and having their data leaked and stolen and so on, all in the name of targeting certain elements of fraud. But this is certainly one area that I think they are linked. And if I were being even more cynical, I would want to investigate whether there's any link at all between the government choosing veterans as the initial group to target and anything at all to do with age, disability, marital status, and so on. Because there's already been criticism that the AI system being used by the government to detect welfare fraud is showing some bias based on age, disability, status, etc. Because I am cynical. I think there is a reason for everything they do. It's just never really what they tell you it is. They are doing something for their own reasons and telling you that it's something else. So I do have my concerns here, particularly with this bill going through Parliament at the moment, which, whilst I agree with the premise of investigating fraud and recovering the money, I don't necessarily agree with the way that they might be doing it, because some people, innocent people, will be caught up in it and they'll have their money taken off them and then they'll have to fight through the appeals process to get it back. those are my concerns. Those are what I think it's for. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I do think it's terrifying, and please do keep sending me your emails. I am reading them with great interest, and there are other ways around this, but I suspect they don't want to do those because they won't give them as much detail, as much access, and as much control as they really want. And that is the real concern here. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.